So once we have a good feel for the project, we understand the property, we understand the surrounding areas, we understand what the client's requirements are of the project, we need to start doing some research in examples that exist. So this is a French country, a French chateau type of feel to it. We're looking for elements in our research that would reflect that. So typically, if you take a look at traditional French country designs, if you go online, go to a French chateau and see what they actually have available there. And that's usually the best way to take a look at the different projects because that's what you're basing it all on. So I've done a search online and typed in elements such as French country, French chateau, outdoors, French chateau, outdoor landscaping, anything to do with that exterior element. And these are some of the images that have come up. And I want to dissect them to sort of understand what I see and what I particularly like. And therefore, I can make the notes accordingly. For instance, on the left side here, I see patios at different levels, seating areas. I get approximate estimates of how much space do I need, like that's approximately 10, 11, 12 feet, somewhere in that range. Some wrought iron work, although I'm not too impressed with the handrail, I am attracted to this Julia type of balcony, post integrations with base pilasters, a fountain element, even though it's not required in this project, but look at the way they've planted around it, insertions of different patio elements, a bunch of different materials put together very classically, very nicely put together. Some of the items as I'm looking on the image on the right, how they've integrated a wall which could be similar to our wall. So for instance here, notice this retaining wall that's just on the edge of the pool completely reflects the house. So the landscaping that's done here is beautifully incorporated the elements of the house into the project, right to the point where the actual slope of the roof of this particular gazebo or gazebo type element matches the slopes that are used in the peaks of the home itself. That's critical. That's the difference between excellent design, conscientious design, and design that's kind of slapped together. So these are the types of things we need to think about as we're working through these particular projects. So in here we see how a fireplace has been integrated into this outdoor living space. So it's an external fireplace. It has stonework in it. It comes right through the pergola, in this case, which is attached to the house. Again, in ours, we're not attaching anything to the home, but it's a nice integration into an outdoor living space. Here we have another pool example on the right where grass is used extensively as a material. Remember, too much paving stone makes it very hard, hot, especially when the sun's beating down on it, and uncomfortable. Here, a nice integration, which has to be tempered with the fact that this has a maintenance element to it, which makes it difficult. For instance, the pool with that close a border to the grass, when you're cutting the grass, you don't want to get the grass in the pool. But notice what they've done is they've created a vista, a view through the pool by having this planter at the back of the pool and a water feature, which makes for a very interesting type of view. Here's another seating area just outside of the rear entrance, and here's the use of wrought iron screening. And again, here we have plants that could cascade up the railing and become an integral screening that defers the view through this. And we do have a screening requirement, but also noting the type of furniture that's used in the space. And look at this flagstone. This is a very well produced project where the flagstone doesn't have the major ridges that could cause tripping or anything of that nature. Here the landscape, the uses of different type of grass type of materials, therefore doesn't have the maintenance that normal grass does because you just allow it basically to grow, and therefore the clippings won't get into the pool. These are all considerations. Here's another outdoor living set. So even though it's a dining room table or a table of sorts, look at it, it's this massive stone type of table area with some sort of a top, and again the use of wrought iron chairs and nice stonework to be used. So these are all examples of what a French country, French chateau, outdoor living, French doors would look like in this particular case. And again, here we have some sort of overhead structure, although it's not solid, used to hang light fixtures and chandeliers. These are all beautiful elements that could be used in the project. Here we have a outdoor pergola that's used for sitting area. It has the nice timber frame structure, although in this case the scale is outside of our scale. It's really big and chunky, where ours is more properly proportioned. A screening of sorts using some sort of cedar hedging, and an integration of the pool and the different living spaces that are in this particular application. This is very traditional, especially in this type of setting. And you can see some of the elements that are in the architecture here, which are similar to the architecture we're using. So it may be something to consider, like planting beds of this nature, whether it be in the front or the back, or private screens between the homeowners, their sleeping quarter areas where they want to sit. Maybe you can have them seated in some sort of garden of this nature where they can enjoy their coffee in the mornings. So this is a nice example because it's very classical. It's very similar to our particular example and our project. Here's another pool that shows the integration of the flagstone without a coping piece that goes right around like a stone section. They've actually incorporated the flagstone in the coping, and the planting comes right up to the edge with the uses of rocks to provide shelter and different type of levels and textures in the project. Another seating area in here on top of flagstone with some formal type of chairs for that application. Nicely done. The walkways covered with nice plants that will provide some sort of framing to everything that we're doing. And that's what we got to consider when we're looking at this. This is a nice little private setting, and they've got almost like a reflecting pool here beside it. Now, things like that, you've got to consider some of the consequences to that. It can't be stagnant water, because obviously that'll attract mosquitoes and cause all sorts of problems. But again, a private sitting area, nicely enclosed, to give it that sense of, you're not supposed to approach it from the outside. You enter it from the inside. And again, this is a French country design that's reflective of what we were doing in our project. This is a nice little walkthrough. Flagstones themselves, I'm just zooming in on that, has planting instead of grout. And that's a beautiful type of thing that happens over seasons to really enjoy it. But look at this view that you get. So you want to walk through this. You want to walk into the next element and see what's there. So maybe there's a piece of art or a fountain or something of that nature. And again, you can see the heavy use of wrought iron as part of the actual architecture itself. And as we move through here, some of these I have to zoom in on. They weren't available in a larger format. Here's the water's edge. Again, very traditional dry stack, partial retaining wall. It's also reflected in the planting beside it. It goes off into a pond, whether it be a live fish pond or a koi pond. It could be a water feature. When you're looking at some of these designs, when you're actually going through them, try to place yourself there. One of the things I like to do is imagine the sounds that I would hear, whether it be the birds or, in case of water, the actual water trickling, things of that nature, because it really gives you a sense of the space. This is not only a three-dimensional space, it's four-dimension in time, but also the senses. And that's what you really got to be aware of as you're designing spaces. Like, you take a look at this gazebo that's on the left side. It's almost like a pergola because it's open space, and they're providing some plants through there. But the colors and the tones are very calming and relaxing. And even though, there's a space with a couple of seats in here and a table and a chair, it's completely unique. It has its own sort of landscaping around it. It's something that you can walk through and to. So it's adventure. Think about the backyard, because you have so much room. And if you're inviting guests over, you may want to have these pockets of different spaces. And if you're having anything more than a few guests, it allows these different groups of people to sort of get into these little areas and have their private conversations away from the other groups, but still be part of the outdoor landscaping as well. So those are the kinds of ideas that I'm thinking about when I'm actually looking at the different designs that we have here. And that's really something that is unique when you're looking at outdoor design, because we do have those elements that are out there. So here I'm looking at if there is a need for, sorry, I'm trying to zoom in on this and talk to you at the same time. If there is a need for an outdoor barbecue area. So this is a gazebo, not your traditional octagonal or six-sided gazebo, but just a rectangular gazebo or a square gazebo that has a nice little bar area and the chairs and a barbecue or maybe even a pizza oven in the back. I know it's France and not Italy, but still we can have our different sort of nuances that we're attracted to and what we would like to have in the space. And the architecture that's put together, the colors, the quality of the materials, these are all important points that you're considering as you're looking at these examples and then picking them out to say, yeah, I want to include that into my project as well. So I've done a basic Google search on French country outdoor landscaping. And in this particular case, what I want you to see is the diversity. That's why this project is really unique, because you may want to formalize things. Like here's a traditional French country garden, which has very symmetrical lines, or you may want to do something that's a bit more organic or fluid. And either one is fine. It doesn't matter, but stick to a design, stick to a theme throughout your project. And just by typing that in, I'm flipping through here and I'm seeing all sorts of unique characters. And I'm looking at the architecture, and the architecture is very similar to the house design, that flared roof edge, the stonework. All of that is important because you can see how others have put this together. Remember, you're not making any of this up. You're looking at a project, an example that exists, and then taking from that example and seeing how you can incorporate the materials that you're going to be selecting to have that look. In this case here, there's a nice sort of landscaping, the paving treatment, which has a border treatment in a different color. It doesn't mean that you have to pick this exact material because you don't know what it is, but you need to look at it and say, yes, those are the types of examples I'm going to try to find to work into my project. So creating a library of pictures, creating a library of elements that you like, but must have that French country flair and feel to it, is very important in you deciding on how you're going to design your space. Remember, every project you work on is based on the client's requirements and the client's taste. So you've got to set yourself into that mode and come up with that. And by having examples like this, I'm just pulling this one up just arbitrarily because it's very similar in architecture as to the project we're working on. If you like this landscaping and you say, well, this is what we're going to do, and they say, well, why did you pick that? The picture helps to show them what the final product will look like and why you made that choice and decision. So what you're doing is validating every choice, every design element that you put into your project based on information that you're finding online. And that really supports your presentation. And that's critical in anything that you do. You can't just say, well, I picked it because I liked it. Nobody cares what you like. This is not about you. This is about your client. And therefore, you must always pick elements that are reflective of their taste and their flair. And by coming up with a nice compilation of different examples, you'll also get their feedback where they can say, yes, I like this and I like that, but I don't like this and I don't like that. And that will narrow down your choices and your selections. So there are literally hundreds of examples. Now, there's no right or wrong answer here, but definitely you can see the elements that give it that French country flair. You can see the architecture is the same everywhere. Even though each one is different, the elements are the same. And that's what you got to look at for your particular project and how you're going to choose and select the French country elements for your final design landscaping.